So now we have this topology. We have a DHCP server, and DHCP server is in the server's LAN, which is directly connected to the student's LAN. In other words, no need for any routing settings because they both are directly connected to the same router, right? So now I'm going to add a new router here. I'll add a new router. Let me just make sure and know. Okay, this router needs what here? It needs some ports, WAN ports, and I believe this router needs also ports. See, no serial ports. So make sure always, before you switch off the router, you go ahead and save whatever settings you did before. Here I'm gonna say copy run start, because this might, because you're gonna switch it off. Does that make sense? So now I'll switch it off, and I'll add these two, and now switch it on. Let's do a connection now. This is a static serial connection. Good. And now I'll add another LAN. Let's call the LAN HR LAN, and we will put some PCs here. Let's give addresses, and it's going to be a continuation of the same style. Connect the switch of the LAN, connect the PCs, and that's it. Now addresses, very simple. Okay, here, let's call this HR LAN. And the address is 192.168.30/24. Is that easy? Tamam. And the WAN also needs address, so I'll give it 40. 192.168.40, but I'm not going to give /24. I'll give it / what? 30. We will give the first address to the, and the second address to the HR router. Does that make sense? Or south, I'll call it. Does that make sense? South router, and the upper one, I'll call it north router. Now let's give IP addresses. We need to give IP addresses here. First address is what is the default gateway. So enable conft host name south. Good. Interface GI000. This is for which LAN? HR, right? IP address 192.168.30.1.255.255.255.0. No shut. Does that make sense, Yabana? Okay, so let us do the serial ports here. We'll start with the top one, the north, enable conft. Let me give it a name now. Host name north. Okay. Interface, which interface I need to give address? Yeah, interface serial 010, right? And yellow IP address. Give me the IP address, please. 192.168.41. What's the subnet mask? 252. Do you all agree? No shut. Good. And I'll go to this one now. I'll configure the WAN port. Interface SE010. Is it correct? Okay, IP address 192.168.42, right? And the subnet mask is 255.255.252. No shut. Now it becomes green. Good. So I configured this port. I configured the WAN. Now, what's needed to make the topology reachable? We have now a WAN. We have two routers, and some ones are in router south, some LANs are in the southern router, some are in the north. Do we need to configure static routing, Yabanat? Yes. So for the north router, I need to tell him about which LAN? HR LAN. What is the next hub? This port, yes or no? So I'll go here. Okay. Exit. Yalla, tell me, what's the command here? IP route. Which LAN? HR. What's HR? 192.168.30.0. What's the subnet mask? 255.0. Where to forward the packets? to the port of the southern router 192.168.42. Does that make sense? Khalas, done. Now I go to the southern router. I need to tell him about two LANs, right? But both have the same next hub, right? So exit first about students LAN, IP route 192.168.10.0, 255.255.255.0. What's the next hub? 192.168.41. Good. The second is the server. So it's the same thing, right? I just need to change this 10 to what, ya banat? Tamam. Now it should be working fine. Now the static routes between everything should be able, because the north router knows about the southern router LANs, and the southern router knows about the north router LANs. There should be full connectivity. Okay, what's next? Next, we need to give IP addresses, dynamic IP addresses to these PCs. And now it's a bit different, because now they are not directly connected to the server's LAN. That's why I did the static routing. Otherwise, it would not reach the server's LAN. Do you get this, ya banat? Right. I need to make another pool. Listen carefully to what I said. There is one pool for the students, another pool for the HR, and so many pools. What do we call it? Pool is a range of addresses you provide to a specific LAN type. I'll go to the DHCP server. Services, DHCP. There is only one now called server pool, right? By the way, you can change its name, but now I'll give one to HR. I'll call it HR pool. What's the default gateway of the HR pool? 31. Do you all agree? طيب. The DNS server is the same for everyone. صح ولا لا? And now this address, ya banat, you need to change. Make sure you. And I want in this LAN, I want to give 100 addresses, but starting from which address? 100. So from 30, 100, this is the starting address where you start, give dynamic IP addresses. And how many addresses I'm going to give? Yani you have 100 addresses that can be used by your host. Does that? And now I click add, because this is another what? Another pool. Okay. You can change the name of this, but if you try to change the name of students pool, you cannot say save in Packet Tracer, because they don't allow you to delete the server pool, the default one. So you can here click add. I click add by mistake. So, but I have two pools that are the same, which is not good. So now I can go here and say, this is only what address I'm giving here, ya banat? Zeros, because if you give something other than 0, it will not work. Let us say here. Now the server pool, and I will save it. So, khalas, this is not now ignored, right? And now we have two pools. One is what? Students and right. Still, there is one problem. Our hosts, this one and this one, will not be able to get IP addresses. Do you know why, ya banat? Look now, if I try to go here and desktop DHCP, it will be blocked by the router port. Why? Because DHCP request is a broadcast. You are not allowed to go outside the LAN. So now what should I do? What we did last time, you must remember this, very important. I need to go to the port of the LAN, to the default gateway port GI000, and configure it with a command to allow broadcast. The command is very simple, IP helper address. And what's the address of the DHCP server, ya banat? 192.168.23. And this should be given to the router or to the port? To the port. Good. So now I will go to this port, which is GI000, interface GI000. The command is IP helper address, and I need to give the address of the DHCP server. In this case, ya banat, now this router would allow the broadcast to go. But okay, and the static routing has already been configured, so they know how to reach the server. Does that make sense? This is a very important command here. So now if I go here and try to request DHCP. Let us see the request. It is going to go through the static routing here. Okay, at least now it's not going to be blocked. Maybe first time is going to fail, but second time it should work. Okay, so now it's times out usually, so we'll make it faster. This one, I think it would be forwarded to the here. Let us make it faster. We'll wait. Okay, next. Because simulation is very slow, yeah, Banat. If you do it with real time or yes, do you see this? It reaches the DHCP server. Khalas. So our request has been delivered to the server. Now the server is going to reply and things will be fine. So I added another LAN. I added another pool. I configured static routing so that the topology can communicate with each other. And one more thing I did, I went to the router port of the HR LAN and configured it to allow broadcasts. Which command I used? IP helper address, and then you provide the address of the DHCP server. Does that make sense? So now if you go, I'll switch to real time. I'll switch to real time here. If you go here, did it get the right address starting from 100? And I'll go to the second one. This should be very quick. على طول. Did it get 101? Good. And now I would test. Let me just test anything. I will go to the website. What did we call the website? B55, right? If the website, if I can go to the website on the server, what does it mean, ya Banat? It means IP addressing is working fine. DHCP is working fine. Static routing is working fine. DNS is also working fine because it will give me the name of the server, and HTTP is also working fine. So if I do here www.b55.com, okay, did it work now? Good. So I did this. Now what you're gonna do? You're gonna add a new LAN to the southern router. Adding a new LAN to the southern router, you need to configure the LAN. I'll give you the addresses. You need also to add static routing entries maybe to the north router to tell him about the new LAN on the southern router. And then you need to go to add a new pool to the DHCP. Okay, but before I finish, yeah, Banat, how many pools you have here? طيب. The DHCP server receives a request. How does it know this request is coming from students LAN or HR LAN? It's very easy. Check this address, default gateway. The address will be forwarded. If the address is forwarded from this port here, the GI000, it would be coming from 192.168.10.1. So it's coming from that LAN. If it's coming from 31, then it's coming from HR LAN. Does that make sense? ماشي الحال. Good, excellent. So here